Yeah, no, don't worry.
Thanks. Everyone's joining on now. That's great. Thank you. Sorry about the technical issues before, everyone, but thank you for joining via the link that's been forwarded via Gabby. So thank you. Great. Well, we'll get started then. Just to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded. The mics and cameras are off for all attendees. So if you want to obviously participate, you can use the chat room while we're going through the information and the questions. And then we'll try and keep 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Obviously, we started a bit late, so but we'll try and have as much time for Q&A at the end as possible. So welcome everyone. Obviously, today is the start of Neurodiversity Celebration Week, which is why we are here. And we wanted to start the week off with basically a webinar that goes through, as the title suggests, about inclusive practices for managers, and also some useful topics and information for neurodivergent individuals in the workplace as well. So whether you are a manager, a colleague, or a neurodivergent individual yourself, hopefully you will find some useful information in today's session, and you'll have some good takeaways at the end of it as well. So we've gone through the housekeeping. I just wanted to give a quick intro, very conscious of time, but I am Francesca McCauley. I'm the CEO and co-founder of an organisation called Automatic, and we are an employment company and also a consultancy that hires autistic individuals into meaningful, sustainable employment. And we work on project work within organisations, basically plugging the skills gaps in areas like data, AI, tech, automation, cybersecurity, and basically bringing autistic individuals into those spaces, into those sectors sustainably. It's very much a supported employment model and approach, and we like to build awareness within our clients and within companies as well. So we do a lot of kind of training and awareness sessions. So I am joined today by Atif Chowdhury from Calling All Minds, CEO of Calling All Minds. So welcome, Atif. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Vinny DeFalco, who is an automatic coach and also founder of Pathways to Potential. So I'll let them both do their own introductions, and then we'll get into the questions. So Atif, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thank you, Seska. Thanks, Vinny, for being here as well, and everyone listening. I'm Atif Chowdhury. I am the CEO of Calling All Minds. I'm excited to say that. It's an exciting time to be doing Neurodiversity Celebration Week. Of course, I know we're all going to think that celebration should be every day, every week, every year, but it's not always that easy. So that's really why we hold these weeks and why we celebrate them and really galvanize how differences can create that belonging. I'm a ADHD learner with dyslexia. It was a big part of my childhood. Affected me quite a lot, particularly around self-esteem. And today I kind of get to champion it. I talk a lot about it from a power point of view, particularly from people of colour, but also people facing childhood poverty and how they have agency in this conversation. And my work has gone on to influence the UN's understanding of neurodiversity as well as the World Health Organization. So I'm excited by that, and I'm going to hand over to Vinny.
Thank you, Atif.
Thank you, Atif. Thank you. So I'm Vinny DeFalco. As Fran said, I work as a coach with Automatic. So I do a lot of the supporting of the individuals and also employers to ensure kind of workplace success and sustainability. With my other hat on, I am also the founder of Pathways to Potential. So we are a coaching and training consultancy focused on supporting disabled and neurodivergent individuals through transitions in key points in their lives in adulthood, independence and employment. So similarly to Atif, alongside that kind of professional side of my work, I also bring a lot of lived experience to the conversation as someone who has ADHD and also dyspraxia. So sharing lots of perspectives around where I've supported others, but also where I've kind of navigated systems myself. and just, yeah, really pleased to be part of the discussion on a very, very important week.
You're both absolutely brilliant. Can I just say that? And thank you so much for joining us. So let's get into it. We'll firstly talk about who's thriving. So first of all, when we say thrives, what does that actually look like for neurodivergent individuals, Atif? And what conditions can make that possible for people?
Yeah, great. I struggle with the word thriving. I think it can, because it almost acts as a consistent, that as if we're consistently doing well. And I'm not sure that's the case for anybody, even if they would say they're thriving. So I'm not sure. I get the kind of analogies that we do use in this field, sort of thriving and not surviving, and the kind
Yeah.
of, and they are sort of throwaway statements that get, I guess, chucked around a lot, and I get why. But I would really like to say is what feels like, and it's a bit like the word belonging. It just means everything and nothing at the same time. You know, like we just chuck it around. So, but just, I guess what it does mean is that, are we getting this better? And I think that's a question that to ask is, are we getting it safer for people to share their differences? And if so, then can we then look at that safety and say, well, is it working? And if it is, are we seeing those folks really showing off what they can do? You know, and it doesn't have to be consistent, but it does need to be available. You know,
yeah.
And so I suppose if I was answering that, I would say on one hand, yes, I think neurodiversity is a bigger conversation than it's ever been, and I think it's growing. And I guess the good thing about that conversation is it's not going backwards. You know, not really. You can't stop talking about it. But I think there's a right way to talk about it that can be a lot more inclusive than we are now. And I think that's really important to talk about. Can we say that there are people thriving on the terms in which they want to show up in it? I'm not sure that's true. But can we say that we are seeing better people or more people talking about neurodiversity and better understandings of it? Then yeah, I'll say, yeah, we're getting somewhere. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, good point. And like you said, thriving, it has connotations of there being absolutely no challenges, right? So it's probably not the best word, but in terms of adjustments and kind of tweaks, management techniques that can promote people to thrive as much as they can do, what would you say would be one adjustment that can really help?
Okay, that's great. One would be really simple, which is anticipate. You know, really like, it's you're a business leader, you're a HR head, you're a line manager. Anticipate that neurodiversity is here. Don't react to it. Recognize it's here already. If you've got a workforce of more than 5 people, you already have it here. It may be that it's in every 5 people you work with. In truth, we're all neurodiverse, but we're not all marginalized because of it. And that's the work to do. So if there's one thing I'd say is welcome it and anticipate it. And that means having systems that are built around universal design, learning and thinking, excitement about what that unlocks, challenging ideas that haven't made people historically safe. And as we grow, and I don't think that's going to happen from this year, but it's my life's work, is to re-understand neurodiversity from a global lens, from the lens of people of color, from the lens of women, from the lens of migration and shame, and how we really look at neurodiversity modeling that was never designed for those realities. It never really cared particularly about it, I don't think. But we have people that live it and they need to be in it. But right now, if there was one word, if I'd replaced it instead of thriving, I'd say is for leaders to anticipate and welcome.
Welcome and anticipate. Love that. And I love that get excited about what it can unlock as well. Love that. I may steal that. So Vinny, thank you for that, Dave. Vinny, from your work supporting people into employment, because you've got a fantastic track record in that in your life's work to date, what's the secret to ensure people can sustain employment in workplaces today? Basically, workplaces that are not inherently designed for neurodivergent individuals.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and then it's one that kind of is really important to reflect on. I don't know if there's necessarily a secret or kind of like a single kind of hack, but I would say the closest thing to the kind of the secret is making sure it's person-centered. So person-centered support. We know that sustaining employment kind of happens when we stop trying to force people to fit into, a system kind of exactly as it is. That kind of square. I always forget the phrase. Square box.
Square peg in a round hole.
Square peg, round hole. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sort of that analogy. And instead, if we're looking at things from a person-centered lens, trying to understand what helps that individual work at their very, very best. So I always say kind of, it's really important to look at the whole picture, looking at how someone might communicate, how someone might process information, kind of how they might manage energy, handle kind of sensory input, but also kind of understand expectations and also build confidence in their role, because confidence is a big part of this as well. So I think that person-centered side of things is really important. Naturally, I think you're not going to be surprised when I say this. I'm a huge believer in, coaching, not just for the individual, but also for employers, for managers as well. So I think there's often the onus gets placed, I think, entirely on the employee to kind of adapt to something, when actually we know that sustainable employment is built when both sides are supported equally. So when the employer feels supported, and also the employee as well. So that for me, I think, is the heart of kind of what we talk about when we talk about supported employment, making it person-centered, and ensuring that kind of coaching is considered in there to support the individual and the employer in equal measure as well.
Both sides,
not just to kind of create those conditions that help someone to get a job, but actually to maintain, to sustain, to flourish within that space as well.
Brilliant. So while we're on that, when we're thinking about a client, a company, hiring manager or hiring company, sorry, what would you say are the best kind of, or what would you advise the most impactful kind of 2 to 3 adjustments that a company can make to help neurodivergent people flourish?
Yeah, I think probably the first thing I need to say. Sorry, go on.
No, that you've seen, that you've actually witnessed to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing I was going to say is just it's important to kind of mention is it should always be personalised when we're looking at accommodations. There's no kind of one size fits all, but there are kind of more simple, I guess, kind of like starting points that would be able to make a big difference. So I think, and this one might sound really simple, but I think is often overlooked. Having an early kind of conversation about how someone works best. And again, like I said, it sounds really simple. It might feel really simple, but you'll be very surprised how often it doesn't happen. We have busy lives. We move in very busy ways, but that explicit kind of early conversation, rather than waiting until something goes wrong or someone feels like they're having a wobble, kind of having a conversation up front about kind of, what helps you to do your best work, what might get in the way, how do you like communicating? I think that's, a very simple way to start it. The second thing is having that clarity, so setting clear expectations, clear priorities, instructions, and feedback. As you know, Fran, feedback is one of my absolute favorite things, and it's about that clarity and that kind of, setting that really, really early. When we think about workplace stress, I think a lot of, well, certainly my experience is a lot of the time I felt any workplace stress, it won't necessarily come from the task itself, but a lot of the time it comes from kind of ambiguity and the questions that exist around that task. So I think that clarity offers that really good grounding and that really good anchorage. And then also the third is flexibility. And I was thinking about this at the weekend, actually, and this would be flexibility in lots of different spaces. But maybe to start simple, thinking about the flexibility in how someone contributes. When meetings happen, they can be, lots of people in one space. has someone been given time to digest what the meeting is about before it? In the space, it's quite hard sometimes to navigate lots of different voices, lots of different personalities. So sometimes, again, my experience was, sitting in a meeting space where someone would say, "What do you think, Vinny?" And I go, "Oh gosh, I have lots of thoughts. I'm not sure which one to give you straight away." So actually looking at giving that feedback in a different way, doing some written follow-ups instead of expecting like an instant verbal response. Or making kind of like small sensory adjustments to certain spaces. So like little minor tweaks, and I think I've seen minor tweaks happening in those spaces where that they had a really big impact on my confidence and also my well-being, where I wasn't being asked what do you think right now, because I'm like, I'm a slow burner, so I'm having lots of thoughts, but I need to be able to process them to be able to tell you what that looks like. So those would be my three, I think. Yeah, early conversation, clarity around things like expectations, feedback, around communication contribution, and also those kind of that flexibility as well in how people can contribute.
Brilliant answer. That processing time, that executive functioning, it can really impact, quite a lot of individuals who are neurodivergent. Absolutely. Great answer. Thank you. Atif, what is one myth about neurodivergent talent that you wish hiring managers would just throw away, delete from their brains?
I think there's more than one, but I think if I had to focus on it, it would probably be the deficit model, a deficit and disorder that is there, and it'd be that because for a certain extent, whilst we've moved away from a lot of that in the UK, particularly, in some ways we haven't. I think there are a lot of communities that just have to, as I touched on earlier, struggle to get past some socioeconomic realities of making their voice seen in the workplace. And I think those deficit models can carry a long time. Certainly the culture and community I'm from, dyslexia isn't seen as a positive thing, and it's largely seen as quite a thing that you don't want your child to have. And that's understandable to an extent because, like I said, we're migrant communities. We just want to socially, economically change our lives. What we don't want are things that are bumps in the road. And these things are there. But then I'd also look at the other myth of superpowers, which I get why people do it.
Yeah.
Because we're in pain. And if we can put a name to something that makes us feel liberated, then understandable. In fact, why not? To a certain extent. But then are people then looking for superpower narratives, and what happens when they don't get it? I wonder more. If I was to give an analogy, it'd be a bit like, as a kid, I used to feel like I'm sort of in a class, particularly, I'm this broken MOT failing Volkswagen Beetle that nobody wants, and it's a bit rusty and just in the way of the traffic, and everybody's there. And then the next day, I'm a Lamborghini, and I think, why am I now a Lamborghini? I don't want to be a Lamborghini. I didn't want to be a Beetle either. I just want to be safe on the road, and I want to just go home safely in my own time. And I don't think that means we're broken cars or supercars. It just means we're everyday belonging cars, or everyday belonging people, more importantly. I suppose I touched on that, really. Can we break those myths? Yeah, we can. But we're going to have to probably break the myth of neurodiversity itself in the sense that what we've inherited probably isn't what it actually is. We've inherited models of autism and superpowers and stuff, and we can probably need to do a lot, especially for women, to recognize that that's just not what autism is. And we probably need to recognize that on ADHD, something that was never modeled on women, and say it's not just about boys who are very noisy. It's how we internalize these thoughts as well as externalize them, how we internalize these behaviors as well as externalize them. But I generally will circle back on stop on this, is the deficit and disorder model has probably done so much harm here that I would like to be part of something that reworks the entire model.
Absolutely. We could have a whole session on myths, couldn't we, really?
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Great answer. So, Vinny, what behaviour would you say gets misread as kind of disengaged or not engaged in the workplace, for example, when it actually is a communication mismatch? And what should a manager do instead?
This comes up so much. I get asked this question a lot. And actually, I was doing a webinar, or I was doing a CPD series last month for Lip Speaker UK, where we were talking to communication professionals about this. But it comes up, it comes up a lot. I hear a lot of language around things like, oh, they seem, really disengaged, or that person's lost momentum. That's a big one. And things like, oh, they're passive. I don't like that word. That person's really passive. And actually, I think often it's what's being observed isn't disengagement. It's actually a mismatch between the environment that person's in, the communication style, and also kind of like what the person needs in order to participate well. Again, talking from my own experience here, like someone might go into into a large meeting, and they might kind of go quiet and start to seem a little bit different to what they're like one-to-one. That might be because they're processing a lot of information. The environment might be sensory overload. If you're in person, you have a whole host of different sensory barriers coming at you all at once. But even if you're on Teams, I get a lot of Teams fatigue, especially because it's a new way of working, a newer way of working. So actually that kind of navigating all the sensory overload, and then also navigating some of those unwritten kind of social rules in the room as well. And also, as I said before, it might also be because someone needs time before contributing. I think there's a real opportunity in here for managers, for leaders to kind of pause before interpreting certain behaviours too quickly. I think the better approach potentially is to approach with curiosity rather than making an assumption. And Fran, I always talk to you about the importance of asking and not making assumptions. It's my kind of big line, isn't it, in our training that we deliver. I think have a conversation. We've already kind of said that. Have those initial conversation. Ask what helps someone to engage. Ask if they prefer to contribute in the moment, afterwards, in writing, in a small space, in a one-to-one. And as I said before, I'm a slow burner, so I relate to this really personally quite well. I've had feedback in the past where I've been in a meeting and someone said, "Oh, you seem," maybe a manager or a colleague afterwards has said, "Oh, you seemed a little bit distant in that meeting." And I thought, oh gosh, I'm coming across as looking distant. However, I was concentrating so hard and trying to process everything that was being said that perhaps I was looking, I used to be called the daydreamer at school. I was daydreaming. But no, I was just, trying to concentrate so hard. And so I think that's where that assumption can be really made. There's something in preparation as well. And again, at the risk of sounding simple and teaching people to suck eggs, sending out agendas, sending out information, clarifying the purpose of a specific space, outlining what an expectation is as well can make a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is great. Vinny, I really like what you said. I have a question as posed for listeners and future listeners and stuff. Is that there's a real kind of crossroads I think we're often at, which is our line managers have more to do with our mental health than our own family does sometimes. In some cases more than your sibling or your wife or husband, and it's quite a big deal. And then there are line managers who no doubt are just awful, but they are plain to you are just good, but they're not psychic, they're just not psychic, and we judge them almost because of emotional burnout as children or emotional need as adults. We judge them as if they must be or should be, or they're not good people because they're not psychic enough, because we've gone through this pain, and then we're asked again to do the emotional labor, which is really what happens a lot. Tell us, okay, what you need, and we will do it. Now, that's not a bad thing, but just hold for a moment that it puts the line manager in a space that they're not counselors, they're not psychologists, and they've got to hold that information. And then they've got to hold lots of different versions of that information. And then they've got to get the job done because they're not there. They didn't sign up to be the front line of a charity necessarily, or an anti neurodivergent program. They didn't sign up to any of those things. They signed up to an organization to get a particular job done. And with it comes a social reality of multiple, at times traumatic even, but multiple cognitive learning attributes and differences. So it's a lot at stake here. So Vinny's absolutely right. So I'm going to draw on it a little bit more. That some of the most easy adjustments to make are just things like giving notes in advance. There are some people who go into a meeting. I'm actually one of them, and I'm the CEO. But I'm just telling you. So I'm just chuckling if I'm feeling it. That's an invitation to others. But every time I go into a meeting, I think, oh, what have I done? Am I in trouble? Now that is from me, and I'm the head of it. But it comes from childhood, and I have to rejig that. Now, there are many people that do that, and they're not CEOs. They internalize that. And they think, oh my God, what's to happen now? What have I done? This can be a real triggering thing. Now, it's also something they can just normalize. They can just think that's what work is. So work is a series of masking events, and a serial masking event upon each other, even within a place that says we're really into neurodiversity. So here's a big question. If our managers aren't psychic, and they're not, and reasonable adjustments have to be made, and they should, but not everyone is equipped to ask for anything because not everyone is safe enough to ask for something, even if they need it, then we've got to sit with those realities. But we need a practical solution to address that reality. And we can't do series of workshops upon workshops upon workshops, because we'll just wear people out as to what they should do. What they need is an actual tool. And this is where I think the audience listening here can access a practical tool. There could be lots of different things, but I'll give an example, and I can support with that later. And I know we're talking with you, Francesca, for the Ultima site, but you can put a toolbar on which will tell potential applicants they're safe here, because this toolbar will make things dyslexia friendly or ADHD friendly. It will make it language friendly. So that sends an anticipatory welcome out straight away for the moment they meet your company. It says things to the staff members when they're looking at the intranet that, look, they're expecting us. This is a practical tool rather than I guess, a philosophy. The other thing, which I think is going to happen more and more in the workplace, but I really push it hard, is that we build a social model passport. And social model passports, and all the social model is just not what label you have, but what barriers do you face? How do we collectively address them? And a passport that says, if I use Vinny's example, I wouldn't say the word slow burner, but I like time to think about things. I like to maybe not make eye contact. It struggles for me, but I am thinking. I appreciate being excited here, and I really appreciate getting notes in advance. These are simple adjustments that don't cost anything, but it allows the manager to say, okay, when I speak to Vinny, I know that she is here, she's very present, and her presence shows up like this. Now, somebody else can have a different set of needs, but when those needs are shared, not disclosed, but shared, they're shared because that organization has built a culture of informed practice. That organization has shown curiosity. That organization is trying to build universal design learning. That organization is trying to welcome neurodiversity because it knows it is the only reality that it faces, and it's been there. Versus an organization that says, you have to tell us what hurts you and we'll act. That is not a great model, but it's the largest model we have. So this generation in 2026 can be the generation that changes that. But I promise you this, neurodiversity is far more interesting when people are made safe and welcome than when it is just being reacted against. And so our line managers also should be forgiven and given the space not to be treated as if they've got to react against us as much as we react against them. They will have children facing barriers and they will live those realities too. Perhaps hiding them because they're an older generation, or perhaps hiding them because they're from a culture that does not feel safe in this. And so I guess the biggest thing for me about neurodiversity is how we make it safe.
Mm-hmm. I'm starting to see why Dan Harris says you sound like a poet when you speak.
Thank you.
You have a you have a lovely flow. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And yeah, it is all about inclusion rather than diversity. You know, you can set out to be, you know, recruit a diverse set of candidates, but if you're not truly inclusive, you know, and you don't provide that psychological safety for people, then you're gonna, the future will not be neurodivergent for you as a company and
Well,
as a team.
diversity, I mean, we don't ask the right questions enough, even in our own movement, if we can call it that. Diversity is counting people, but inclusion is insisting people count. You know, we have to get the difference. We can say we've got lots of women here, but okay, great. But which women? You know, we've got lots of people of color. Okay, great, and that's a good thing. But what's the class stories behind those journeys? Do you know, what does that tell us, and why don't we ask it? Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Right. Well, let's before we talk about hiring fixes for managers, you know, I want to add the layer that Atif, you speak so brilliantly about, which is, you know, neurodivergence doesn't just sit in isolation; it intersects with, you know, race, gender, class, sexuality, disability, and immigration status. So, Atif, when neurodivergence also intersects with race, gender, or class, for example, what things can an employer change to make inclusion work for more than one group at once? What's the best universal move?
Yeah, I think that's wonderfully said, but it is enthusiasm and curiosity. The two sit together, you know. And then what does that actually move into? I think I'll probably reinstate that those watching is look at it closely. We're going to watch more and more passports coming into the workplace. Calling All Minds has a particular one called Access Passport. There are others, but I would like to see all passports be based on something that they're not right now. Too many cultures are saying we've got a passport for disabled people and a passport for neurodiverse people or neurodivergent people. This will fail because it reinforcing othering, and it reinforces othering not taking account what we've just said. Social inequity. That if you have to do more in a workplace to get there, then you're hardwired to share less. So those with different gender, race, or migration, as you've said, or sexuality, or any barriers, aren't just going to come forward on neurodiversity just because they've got a label. And more importantly, is the work really about those with a label? Really, I mean, seriously, we got to, if it is, then we're going to fail again. We have to look at, can we make an inclusion passport that addresses barriers? Could a mother who's raising her children on her own and is not a director, so she can't take policy in the workplace, but she is facing a barrier. She has to leave early at work, and they think she's not committed to the work because she has to leave at 4:45 every day. It affects her career, it affects her camaraderie with colleagues, it affects her chances of promotion. Is it a disability? No. But is it a disabling situation? Yes, absolutely. So can we get passports to really build on the social model? Yes, I think we can. I think not even, but Calling All Minds has done it. And if we did that, we have a practical tool for participation and what looks like healthy participation. I'll finish on this. I don't think that disclosure is healthy participation. I think disclosure is because of urgency and fear, and we do it for job protection. And job protection is always mental health loss, especially if you're waiting for a long time for an adjustment to come back to you. Sharing is because the company's done the work. Sharing is because the culture is showing itself to be real. Sharing is saying, because I can. You know, and that's a world of difference.
Brilliant, thank you, Vinny. I'll bring it back to you. In transitions into work, who tends to fall through the cracks when support is standardised? rather than individualized.
Always forget to unmute myself. So I think this is an interesting one. I think none of us fall into kind of like neatly into a category. A lot of the work that I do centers around individuals who have a learning disability or have a learning disability and a coexistence of another neurodivergent condition. So I think often I see those with a learning disability falling through the cracks because we have a lot of standardized support. We have standardization in the way that we interview and we hire. We have standardization in the way that we expect people to show up to work. So I think, and Atif's kind of touched upon this quite a bit as well already. I think standardized support really misses the complexity of our real lives. So someone who's, navigating neurodivergence, a learning disability, issues with confidence, as you said, a mum coming back from maternity, poverty, any gaps that they might face in their own opportunities. And also kind of a lot of people might be experiencing, previous negative experiences of education or the workplace.
Mhm.
And then if they're handed kind of generic support that everybody else is getting, it is just not going to be enough because there's so much of a nuance to that individual and what they've been through, what they're going through, how they exist as well.
Mhm.
So I'm going to kind of hark back to supported employment being really, really important. So the principles of supported employment are place, train, maintain, and flourish. And they are, they're four of my favorite words really, because we're coming back to making sure that support is person-centered. Hiring processes are equitable. They have to have that equity, and they also have to have those real opportunity kind of things like work trials, and also supporting people to be managed fairly, supporting those leaders to be able to manage fairly. I always say it's really important to start from a baseline of belief in someone's capability. So you believe that someone has a capability, someone can, and someone with the right tools and with the right support that is personalized, they will be able to, and I'm not going to say thrive, they are going to be able to move forward, to be able to grow confidence, to be able to feel empowered, and to feel like they have that sense of belonging in the workplace. And again, just going to go back to kind of to summarize that simple but very important principle of asking people and not making assumptions. So standardized support, yeah, I think the main point there is it really misses our individual nuances, our individual complexities. That person-centered support is what we need to see more of.
Brilliant. Yeah, totally agree. Thank you. So let's make this useful. If there are any hiring managers that are watching this, what are the top 3 things that hiring managers would do? What are the top 3 things hiring managers keep missing about neurodivergent candidates, and what should they do instead? That's to either of you.
I think we're covering it quite well in this, but I'm going to recap a little bit to be succinct, because a lot of the things we're talking about, I mean, I love what Vinny's saying, and so I guess, but it's that space that people want practical takeaway. So what I would say is that if you don't have an intersectional understanding of neurodiversity, then you don't really have a relevant understanding of neurodiversity. Yeah. So then the immediate thing is, okay, what does he mean by that? So, well, because we're all intersectional, we all face barriers in our lives. I am a husband, I am a son, I am a father. These are intersectional stories. And with it, I'm also from Bangladesh, but I'm born in the UK. Beginning of my life was in foster care. So all these things are intersectional stories that everybody has, and they shape the person, not the label. So if you look at my diagnostic doesn't tell you any of those things I've just told you. It doesn't tell you anything about my childhood particularly, other than how I score on a particular test. So it's not equipped, but mostly the manager is not equipped. And the user itself is saying, well, I use this piece of paper because it's magic and it helps me get out of jail. But it actually isn't that accurate. Not really. You know? So go back to the point of it is that look beyond the label. And especially for those who may not be afraid of a label. We, as those who are listening today, are you really going to go past women who may be homeless and they don't know anything about a diagnostic test or a RIT scoring, but we're going to say they're neurotypical? Are we really going to do that? I mean, that's really odd. Are we really going to say someone's neurotypical in general when we don't know anything about them? It doesn't matter if they're homeless or not. We don't know anything about them. But because they haven't scored a particular test that we have or reached it, they're neurotypical. You can say, yes, there are things that have been designed without healthy participation in mind. Absolutely true. You can definitely say that about the 20th century workforce. But if there were three things to take away, it would be look at or learn about intersectionality, what it means. Ask organizations like you guys, Ultima, like Pathways, and like Calling All Minds. We're here. Second is how do we recognize, and Audre Lorde said it really well, a brilliant black feminist wrote, so there's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we don't live single issue lives. So this really helps, but these are things that help managers not to be psychic, but it helps them to meet, which is more something that's more than them being a manager. It's their role in a civil society. It's their role as somebody's aunt or uncle. Maybe it's their role as somebody's parent.
Absolutely.
It really speaks to that. The third thing is, again, be really curious. It's so much more interesting when people can show you their skills because they feel safe. I can't stress that enough. It does so much for the well-being of people, not themselves as individuals alone, but the people around them. And this is what collective liberation gives us. I can talk about that all day, but I won't for now.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Vinny, have you got anything to say on that? I think we'll move to Q&A after this because we've got 10 minutes left. So did you have anything to say on that question?
Just have to say I agree with everything that Atif said there. I think the education piece is so important. Educating yourselves, learning, being vulnerable, asking questions, not being afraid to sometimes make mistakes. We all make mistakes when we're all learning. And it's not about being chastised for making those mistakes, but that curiosity comes as part of that as well. And that's really, really important. When I used to manage a large team, I'd always say, that kind of vulnerability in your own human sphere is really important. Being human, having conversations, asking questions, curiosity. So yeah, just cementing and agreeing with everything that Atifa said there is yeah, absolutely spot on.
And some good, and there's a lot of good managers out there, like you were saying, Atif. Good management is listening, isn't it? Asking questions. That individualized approach benefits everyone, not just neurodivergent employees. So having that good management technique intrinsically, but also, you're not born a good manager or a bad manager. Obviously, there's a lot of self-development in there, and you can learn those skills, and it'll benefit everyone. So, yeah, brilliant, really good information. So we've probably only got through half of what we were supposed to get through because we were probably a bit ambitious with the topics, but there's plenty more to go at. But let's go to
we can do more.
Let's go to Q&A if that's okay, because this is where we can have the best impact for the attendees. So Emma has said, great session. I think it can be important to also touch on some managers and employers getting stuck on formal diagnosis before taking action, when actually accommodations and small things can be put into place to support that person and or employee to enable them to succeed. Really important point. Who wants to take that?
I agree. I want to If it's okay, Seska, I can put a link to the Access Passport. Would you
Go for it.
welcome that?
Yes,
Yeah.
please do that. Yeah.
But I'm agreeing very much with what Emma said. We don't necessarily need to take everything down occupational health, because that itself is a product of power that can be really liberating for some and deeply disturbing for others. Sometimes a good invitation is precisely that, a good invitation. But when you've been injured, even when if it wasn't in that workplace but another one, then that invitation can feel like an imposition. So how do we get behind that? Well, we just make sure that there is inclusion for everyone. And we do that by using tools. I'm going to put in a tool right now called Access. It's just a tool. But the most important tool in the world isn't going to be an app. It's not. It's not going to be It's going to be attitudes. Do we have the attitudes of people that says, yes, I really want to get behind people here? The most disabling thing on earth, more than ramps or lack of them, is attitudes. It's the ones that we have about ourselves that says we don't matter, and we believe in that. And it's the attitudes we have about people we've never even met. and all of that creates far more barriers than we realize. So we need to make passports, like I say, call them what you want, but I'm just going to say inclusion passports, but for everybody, rather than just a specific set of people.
Yeah, please put that link in there, Atif, so people can access it and read more about it. That's really good. And just on that as well, you don't. So quite a lot of people don't realise that you're not allowed to ask for a formal diagnosis. It's actually illegal to to demand one. So if you identify as neurodivergent, as one example, and you request certain accommodations from your employer, that is enough. So yeah, absolutely, really important point. Ian Bainham, hi Ian. We've been communicating quite a lot recently to do with the Neurodiversity and Business Conference, so good to see you attending. Autistic manager here, so live both perspectives. I've been using social passports in my team for a number of years. Brilliant. Covering aspects such as learning styles, hidden signs if someone is having a rough day, what excites people, as well as intersectional aspects. I also do things such as sending interview questions in advance for everyone when recruiting and setting expectations. Brilliant. The issue I have is constantly being challenged by business. I've come to learn you have psychological safety in proactive environments, but can only create pockets of psychological safety in reactive environments. What advice would you give for a manager who constantly feels like an uphill battle with organisations just to bring neuro inclusion for all? Awesome question. Who's going to take that?
It's a really interesting one. And it's also, I just want to point out how brilliant it is to hear of the things that you're already doing and the championing you're doing in that space. Again, it's something I hear a lot, a challenge that comes up in the business. I think my advice here would be to keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop what you're doing. But having as many kind of open conversations with different people in the organization as possible, in terms of the reason why this is important for everybody as well, not just for specific colleagues, as we said earlier. We said earlier on, we all exist in nuance, we all exist with lots of complexities. If organizations aren't keeping up with this, or if they're challenging it, what that makes me think is they are worried. There's some risk aversion. There is potentially a lack of knowledge, and that sometimes breeds fear. So it's about that continuous education. I would say encourage them to come to things like this, webinars, encourage them to have conversations with other businesses perhaps that are doing some really great work, because sometimes in our spaces we can become really siloed and kind of just kind of say, actually no, we're gonna put up a wall there and say, I'm going to challenge this because it's someone's getting an unfair advantage. I hear this sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of the time. Have conversations, come to these spaces, educate, support that education, but don't stop what you're doing, because you're doing really, really great stuff. So I think that fear does does happen and does come up. So I think it's just about kind of continuing to bang the drum where possible.
I think that's a really important point that you make there, Vinny, about it's obviously a lack of awareness, but obviously it's about the why. Why should we be doing this? You know, what benefits does it bring? What does psychological safety mean to people? And you know why is the future neurodivergent? So bring it back to the title. You know, what benefit is that going to bring my business and overall kind of workforce? So yeah, and that's just awareness, isn't it? Like you said, and that, you know, the alignment within internally. So yeah, no, brilliant, great answer.
I like that Atif has mentioned there is a business case. There is absolutely, you know, businesses are massive machines. They need to be viable. They need to be profitable. But as well as, you know, as well as the heart, as you said, Atif, you need to be doing things that are supporting people to be retained in the workplace, to be developed in the workplace, to be, you know, so the business case is huge here. And, you know, I often say to businesses, it's really important because if you are putting the wall up and saying, actually, no, I'm not going to, you know, we've done as much as we can, we're not doing anything further, you're gonna fall behind. There's gonna be a, you know, you're gonna fall behind in terms of growing your business, attracting the right customer base, you know, attracting customers who are neurodivergent. You know, you're not going to be able to sell your products in the way that you'd hope to. So
exactly, yeah. It's about bringing every mind to the table to make your business, you know, kind of bulletproof as such, and you know, giving you a competitive advantage basically, and in a very highly competitive market.
I might just add a couple points as well, if I may, just to Adam's to Ian's point. Yeah, I mean, there is a business case, and there, just to stress as well, and as Vinny said it, so I won't repeat too much on there, but do one thing is the school to prison pipeline, and it's important to think about that, a space where people go to prison from pupil referral units, from school to pupil referral units, from pupil referral to youth custody to sometimes prison. They are not made up of more severely anything. They're not made up of more dyslexic kids or more ADHD kids or more autistic kids. They're not. They're made up of poor autistic kids. They're made up of poor ADHD kids, and they're made up of poor dyslexic kids. Now that costs the country, it costs the country money, a lot of money. Now when we go, let's take us out of there for a second. The workplace, 5% of the UK's GDP, that's £38 billion a year, is spent on mental health loss. That's to do with retention, replacement of staff that are mentally unwell, grievance issues, absenteeism, and even worse than all of those things, which I think is presenteeism. People who are just in jobs they don't feel welcomed in. It costs the economy a fortune. Companies are failing on this. Some are winning on it. Some of them are going, yes, this life experience, when it's safe, is helping my environmental social governance goals. This recruitment process I'm doing helps my environmental social governance goals. And this makes us stronger leaders. We have better retention here. We have better staff surveys here. And our teams, when they feel safe, they make others feel safe. We don't have to do it as much because the team is doing it for each other. This is not hard maths. It is there already. Passports, I mean, I'm saying that a lot, but that helps create a business case because it allows the numbers to be worked in. That's another conversation. I don't want to dominate that. But the numbers are there. It just needs people to think about it. And I'm going to finish on here that I'm right now listening to you in the studios of City AM. This is the Square Miles newspaper, City Finance. And they are launching work with the Mayor's office right now, which is where I'm here, around the Square Mile, which is the financial capital of the city where money is made, to make this city a neurodiverse friendly city. If the Square Mile can do it, and then bankers can do it, and the most highest paid people going, we're going to choose to do it, then they will be able to make that safer in their workplaces, which is why they've asked me to be here today. But on top of that, they can adopt the social economic realities of people who can't be in rooms like I'm in today, or in a podcast that we're doing today. And this, I suppose, from my own life experience of starting out where I did and growing up where I did, It's a story for another day. It's not easy, but it can be done. But we've got to do a reality check on what does neurodiversity really mean for people who are struggling with shame or even the space to tell those stories. And what Ian's done here, and it is brilliant, because when I do interviews, I do the same thing. It's not my job to catch someone out. It's my job to make something safe enough for me to make a good decision. What do I need to do that so this person I'm interviewing can really shine? This person can change my organization. What am I doing so they don't have to prove too much? They're just comfortable to tell me how they would do it. Does that make sense? It really speaks to the heart of this. There is a business case. There has been for a long time. I don't think there's many excuses people can have in this day and age other than organizations that are desperate not to do the hard work, or even, in some as Ian's shown, is not even to do the easy work. I hope that's not too heavy, but I really mean it. It's changing, and it's changing for the better.
That's brilliant. That's a great wrap up. Thank you so much. I'm very conscious of time now. I feel like we've got through a lot, but not as much as we planned, like I said. But the recording will be accessible after this. We will also send out a feedback form, if that's okay, to the attendees to see how you enjoyed the session today, what you found useful, what you'd like to see in future events that we're planning to run. So please just fill that out. It should take kind of 2-3 minutes of your time. Thank you both to Atif and Vinny for joining me today. It's been brilliant, enlightening, very articulate, both of you, and you've got a lot of experience, a lot of credibility, so thank you. And yes, thank you for everyone attending. Sorry about the technical issues at the beginning. Hopefully we can avoid them next time. If you have any questions after this that pop into your head, after the session, please do get in touch directly. We'll reach out to you all with the feedback form, and there's obviously some links that you can access after this. But thank you very much, everybody. And I hope the rest of your Neurodiversity Celebration Week goes well, and your day-to-day Atif is good. And Vinny, I'll catch up with you later this week.
Thanks, everyone. Great to share a space
Thank
with
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Lovely to
Bye.
see you, Vinny.
You too.